I think what's going on with Matt is really the unfortunate but perfect microcosm of this entire election. Right. There's this ongoing argument that you just brilliantly laid out of what's the real divide between Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And Clinton supporters at great lengths, spilled thousands of pages in ink over the narrative that Bernie Sanders has a problem with women and that Bernie Sanders has a problem with African Americans and minorities in general, even though they use African Americans as a proxy for all minorities. And what you and Matt have been doing at great lengths, and I've enjoyed your reading, is that you simply state the facts based on the data. And the data clearly suggests that the greatest indicator of who you're going to support in this election is not race, it's not gender, but it's your age. And this is exactly where Joan Walsh came in, flying in as the great black splainer in chief to all people that are white, and said that she refuses to basically bow down to people who ignore the will of people of color and women. And so she was trying to perpetuate that narrative. And Matt just very calmly, no big words, no fight, nothing. He just calmly replied to the tweet saying that's not true. It's really an indicator of the indicator is age, and all hell broke loose from there. Take it from there, for me.
Yeah, so this is, I do want to push back on one thing, though, because you said that she's the black splainer to all white people. And it's worth pointing out that she also black splains to black folks as well. She does this on a regular basis.
Why'd you have to remind me? I'm trying to block that portion out. I actually have an entire segment of somebody who is trying to black splain away, of a white person black splaining away Cornel West racism. So you had to bring that up, Carl. But let's go back to Matt so I don't go off on a tangent. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So what Matt did is he just rehearsed the exact same argument that he's been making for months on end. And if you actually look at the exchange, he's not, making personal attacks. He's not doing anything like that. That happens is Joan's immediate response is,
"You're trolling."
Basically, to quote tweet this. So she doesn't just say you're trolling, but she quote tweets this to her followers, which is generally among the people who talk about harassment understood to be an invitation to your followers to come and dogpile on this guy. And predictably, Tandon sees this and jumps in.
Okay, hang on. You broke up right there. Let me say the name. Neera Tandon. Okay. She's the president of Center for American Progress. Okay, go for it.
Correct. And she's also a former, and she's known as a close confidant to Clinton. Predictably, Joan Walsh do this, and so she just jumps in too. And again, it's worth noting that when she jumps in, she doesn't make any kind of substantive critique or contribution to this debate. She just says, glad to see this stuff doesn't just happen to me.
Right.
So this isn't helpful. This isn't a civil discourse. And by the general standards of harassment that we talk about, when someone's trying to have a conversation and then other people just start piling in and leaping in, that's the aggression start.
Right.
Generally, you say, okay, these people did something they shouldn't. At that point, Matt, because Matt's this rude young teen, he's much better at this kind of thing than they are. He hits them back. He hits them with the internet owns and gets a million faves, and people think it's very funny, except evidently for the people who got.
And let me jump right there, because I want to point out like the things that are important. This whole conversation to me and to people like you, or especially people like you, Matt, you guys go back, you guys work together. I'm pretty much, I met Matt this year in terms of the internet and his writing. But when you read his writing and you see the significant contribution he makes, this is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. And it was it's a petty internet Twitter feud that everyone who lives on Twitter for more than 30 minutes, you're going to get caught up in a feud and you're going to say some things. And Matt said he used the internet meme of what is it? Scumbag Steve.
Scumbag Steve. This
Right.
is the thing. This is interesting because this is actually another place where this great age divide comes in. So if you look at how the pundits reacted to it, all of the younger ones got, like Gawker and all of them, get that he was referencing this meme called Scumbag Steve, which is of this guy who does sort of, you know, selfish things.
Right.
And the point he was making there is that Neera Tanden accepted her earlier in her life and then made it more difficult for people like Matt's mother to get when she was older. That's a classic Scumbag Steve move. That's
now to be sure, because there's a little bit of lag in your sound, but I want to make sure everyone in my audience heard you. So you're saying he used a Scumbag Steve, which if you've been on the internet any meaningful amount of time, you've come across, and it basically talks about a guy who's extremely selfish. He applied this to Neera Tanden, who at one time benefited from welfare, but then later on actually was working with Hillary Clinton when she opposed or when she was trying to push for welfare reform, essentially gutting welfare for people like Matt's mother and millions of other people across the nation. Let me fast forward just a little bit for time's sake, and we didn't put the horrible thing at the beginning, and we're bringing it here at the end. But the end of the day, Matt gets let go from demos.org, which is a policy, a think tank. He was able to write about poverty. He was, in my opinion, I've read a lot of their writers over there and journalists over there. They're all good, but Matt fomented to the top. He was one of their best writers, in my opinion, and their knee-jerk reaction was to not only criticize him and throw him under the bus online, but then the next day they let him go, or their relationship, however it ended, their relationship ended. All over a conversation between that really hinges on the big divide on the left, the divide between Hillary Clinton supporters just generally and Bernie Sanders supporters generally, but more specifically, there's a great age divide, and this is where it really is just blown out of the water. You can clearly see it, and he's a victim of it. To much celebration of a lot of people, who probably have all linked back to his work at one time or another, right? That's the amazing thing. Talk a little bit about the fallout and what's next for Matt.
Well, yeah. So there's definitely been some pretty crass and embarrassing celebration and Schadenfreude about what has happened to Matt. It's just really reprehensible. And you have people like Michelle Goldberg writing articles in Slate today insisting that he's not a victim. As far as I can tell, the argument here is that it's okay to come loss, but just as long as you don't lose your job, which is kind of frightening prominent Clinton supporters to be out there publicly saying, for anybody who's concerned about their income and don't want to have to work multiple jobs to support a family. Right. But so, yeah, since then, you've had all that happen. You had the other evening, you had, this. So what Matt did was a fundraiser to ask people to help compensate for this income loss because they have a baby coming up in a couple of weeks. They structured their finances and planned it based on the assumption that he was going to have this job. Right. It's ridiculous to pretend like this wouldn't be some kind of financial hardship. Right. And amazingly, the outpouring. I was actually with Matt and Liz the evening that this came in, and just the outpouring of support and solidarity on the left. People just donating. Like a lot of them were just tiny little bits. He wasn't getting these huge, massive donations, but just so many people came out to show their support. And some of the people now are spinning this as just kind of a pity party, right? And of course, making this about Matt not really deserving it. But I really, especially if you look at the comments that people are making when they're donating, it's pretty clear that these people are making a statement. And they're saying, we aren't going to let these powerful people destroy one of our most prominent voices just because of, a part of it is a petty grudge. There are all kinds of sort of institutional politics going on here in the background. And I think that more of that is going to be exposed in the coming days and weeks. I know that some journalists are already looking into this. But the left stood up for Matt, and it was a great moment of solidarity. It made something good out of something that could have been really bad.
And that's it speaks so much to the willingness of the left, and I say the left in general, and I'm talking about people who are not Republicans, and so that's a broad spectrum, right? It speaks so much to people who are on the Democratic side of our American politics, their willingness to engage in the same type of behaviors that they complain about from the Republican Party, as well as eating their young when their young don't obey and fall in line. Because the truth of the matter is, Matt, and again, I'm talking about him for anybody who's listening and you're wondering, like, why are we talking about this guy that you probably don't know? One, he was on my show Thursday night, right? The last time I was on air, he was on air, and we had a brilliant conversation about poverty, about race, intersectionality, and in this election. And then as soon as the show was over, he was knee deep in this situation. So that's why I'm talking about it, on top of the fact that he is a brilliant writer. I want to write like him when I get a chance to not work my daytime job and actually be able to write full time. But to hear that the Democrats and people in power, establishment players, however you want to categorize them, are willing to sacrifice their young that don't obey, instead of mobilizing mobilizing a voice like Matt, who can be so powerful against, ultimately you want to say against conservatism, but we're not naive, and we understand why they don't elevate voices like his, because voices like his actually step on their toes and their neoliberal economic ideologies and goals. So, I'm glad, first of all, thank you for putting the word out, and all the people who are supporting Matt. I'm a little upset because you guys closed the fundraiser so quickly, and I didn't find out about it until I was on my way back from New York this weekend. So let us know if you're going to open it up again, send out a tweet so that we can send in the second wave, because I want to see him. I want to see Matt become bigger, Matt Bruenig become bigger because of this, because that's just how I operate.